Daniel introduces his new girlfriend, Beatrice, to his parents. Carlo is surprised. He can't believe that his mistress is dating his son. The mother finds Beatrice very beautiful and thanks her for the compliment. Marco pretends to drop all the wine. Beatrice regrets the incident. Marie apologizes on behalf of her husband, saying he is very clumsy. He must have been surprised by the news as Beatrice is truly very beautiful. Marco agrees, saying he was indeed very surprised. Beatrice apologizes, saying it wasn't her intention. Marco says it's not a problem, this could be an excuse to open another bottle of wine, and invites her to see the wine cellar. Beatrice accepts the invitation. Daniel says the cellar is his father's favorite place, stating that he likes it very much but not more than he likes his son, and invites her in. Marco says Beatrice will greatly enjoy the experience. Daniel and his mother stay behind, but she tells him to go ahead, and she'll take care of the mess her husband made later. Marco asks what she thinks she's doing there. Beatrice doesn't understand his indignation, recalling that before, when no one was looking, she was welcome in this house, in bed, on the couch, and even on the floor. Marco remembers those good times, but wants to know what she wants with his son. She realizes his indignation is because she's with Daniel. He wants to know what she intends with this. Beatrice says she's not crazy, but he remembers he said he was going to leave his wife and hasn't done it yet. Marco says it's not that simple. His wife is the CEO of the company, handling finances. If he leaves her, he'll end up with nothing, and Beatrice wouldn't want a man with no money. She needs to be patient, but instead, she decides to show up there dating his son. Beatrice always hears Marco's excuses, but what about her? Where does she fit into this? Marco says he will divorce, but he needs to continue in the company, find a way to resolve some things, or he'll end up with nothing. Beatrice says in the meantime, she'll stay with Daniel. Marco says no, she needs to disappear, and when he has resolved everything, he will come for her, but not now. She says she won't disappear. Marco promises he will reward her, but she can't hurt him. She can't use his son as a way to get revenge. Beatrice finds it funny he deduced that and says Daniel is like Marco in several aspects, but there are some things he does better. Marco says his son is of the new generation, he has to be better, but Beatrice thinks he's trying to hide his jealousy. Marco claims not to be jealous, but he knows what she really wants isn't him or the son but the money. He asks how much she wants to disappear, and she replies with a very high amount, shocking Marco. He doesn't have that much money. Beatrice doesn't care, that's the price she wants to leave, but Marco can't afford it all. It's too much money, they would have to negotiate, she's not worth all that. Beatrice says she's worth more than that. Marco wants to know what she wants, to get pregnant by his son? He'll make sure she doesn't get any of that, not their money, not the family, nothing. He calls her a gold digger. Beatrice finds it amusing. Marie appears asking if everything is okay. Marco replies yes, they were just talking. Marie asks if he was offering all these wines, he says yes. Beatrice says they can open a bottle and chooses a wine, saying that besides being wonderful, it will serve perfectly for this special occasion. Marie finds it interesting she knows Marco's wine so well, it's as if she had been there before. Marco says he's great at explaining about wines, and Beatrice says it's true, he explained very well, she learned quickly, it would be impossible for her to have been there before. Marie realizes it's true, her husband always has to explain everything about the wines to their visitors. Beatrice pretends this is news to her. Marco says she won't destroy his family, she won't take his money, so it's better to stay away from his son. Beatrice replies, that's what they'll see. Marie shows her son that this is a very beautiful ring, it's a family heirloom that has been in the family for generations. Daniel is moved to hear that. Just as Beatrice appears, Daniel throws himself to the ground, saying he couldn't wait any longer. She wants to know what this means. He asks if she'll marry him. Marco intervenes immediately, saying he can't do that, and takes the ring. Daniel wants to know what's going on, and his father says he can't make such a hasty decision so quickly. They are a family, they need to talk more about it, they don't even know Beatrice well yet, and marriage is a serious matter. He says he needs to talk to Beatrice. Daniel doesn't understand what's happening, but his mother reassures him, saying sometimes it's hard to fit into the family. Marco wants to know what she's doing. Is she going crazy? Why didn't she say no back there? Beatrice asks how he can act like this at the happiest moment of her life. Marco says it's fine, he'll get her the money she wants, but she needs to disappear, say no to Daniel. Beatrice finds it amusing and says the deal just changed. She asks for more money than she had asked for before. Marco is completely horrified by the amount she asked for. He doesn't have that much money to spare. He can't take all that money from the company. He reverts to the initial agreement and says if she makes more trouble, she'll receive much less than what he offers. Beatrice says he's not considering some important elements. Marco wants to know what those are. Beatrice lists the first reason, saying she has an insurance policy in his name in the company. Anything happens to her, he will have to pay her family. Marco doesn't care about that. The company will pay, he has nothing to do with it. Beatrice goes to the second important fact. She just sent a very important email to some friends with several interesting photos and conversations between them, and if anything happens to her, they will send everything to the police. Marco doesn't believe she sent all the conversations to her friends. He concludes she has gone completely mad. What a problem he got himself into. Beatrice laughs and says that's exactly what he heard. Marco is furious and says he will give the agreed initial amount, but she needs to go back to the room and say no. She says she won't, he doesn't want her to touch him. Beatrice realizes he doesn't seem to want to solve the problem, so she will go back to the room and tell Daniel she accepts the marriage proposal, that she will join his family. Carlo will never accept that she does that, but she says she will do it anyway. Before going back to the room, she says she forgot something. Marie asks her husband what's going on. He replies they were just talking. Beatrice says that's right, they were talking and Marco approved their marriage. Daniel is surprised and happy with the news, and asks if she will accept the proposal. She replies yes. Daniel is happy. Marie is happy for her son. Beatrice thanks them. Marie welcomes her to the family. Marco also, not very happy. Daniel thanks his father for the approval. Marie says she is very happy for them. Women always approached her son for interest, but she is glad Beatrice is not like that, because even knowing they are broke, she is accepting to marry Daniel. Marco is surprised by the information. Beatrice is nervous, she doesn't want to believe what she just heard, but Marie says it's true, they are broke, they had to lay off several employees, but now that she has joined the family, she could help them too. Beatrice asks them to explain this better. Daniel hadn't mentioned anything about this situation. Daniel doesn't understand, he didn't know anything either. Marie says it's true, she didn't tell her son anything about it. He doesn't participate much in company matters. She also apologizes for Beatrice wearing a fake ring. She couldn't buy a real diamond ring, but this one is beautiful anyway. Beatrice finds this appalling, takes off the ring, and returns it to Daniel. Beatrice sarcastically thanks Marco for wasting her time with him and Daniel. She says they can keep their bankruptcy, she's leaving. Daniel asks her to wait, they can talk. Marco wants to understand the whole story, but his wife says that's it, they're broke. He wants to know how this happened. When? Why didn't she warn earlier? Marie says that's it, there's nothing to do. Marie asks her son what happened. He replies that he couldn't talk to her, he has never seen her so nervous before. Marie is satisfied, now they can clarify some things. She says they're not broke. Marco is relieved. Marie, as the CEO of the company, couldn't allow that to happen. Marco is happy and says his wife almost scared him to death just now. There was a good side, to keep that gold digger away from their family, but for a moment he was really worried. He was thinking about how to solve this problem, and asks his wife not to scare him like that again. Daniel says he understood part of it, but asks his mother what's going on. Marie says her husband has a lot to think about, a lot to solve, especially regarding chasing his mistress. Marco pretends not to know what she's talking about. This is absurd. Daniel asks them to wait a second. What do you mean? His mother says that's it, Beatrice and Marco have been dating for a long time. Marco says that's not true. He even knew Beatrice, but would never cheat on his wife, never. He says Beatrice seduced his son, tried to seduce him too, but nothing ever happened. Marie doesn't believe a word he says. Marie explains to her son that Marco promised Beatrice several times that he would divorce, but that was a long time ago, and he never fulfilled his promise, so Beatrice decided to go out with him. Marco says that's a lie, he would never divorce his wife, they have a beautiful family. Marie hands her son the cell phone with all the evidence. Beatrice was very kind, telling her everything. In fact, Beatrice didn't tell her directly, but rather a friend, but they know how gossip spreads quickly, one friend tells another, and that ended up coming to her knowledge. Marco asks if his wife created a fake profile to talk to Beatrice, she says yes. In addition, she saw through the company's cameras the visits Beatrice made to her husband's office, in addition to her making an insurance policy in his and the company's name. How would she enter without the keys? Marco now realizes how everything makes sense. Daniel asks if this ring really isn't from the family, doesn't belong to his mother. His mother says this ring was really hers, but he can keep it, someday he will find a woman who really deserves to receive it. The son thanks her. She asks a favor, that the son leaves them alone to talk. He agrees. Marco tries to talk to his son, ask him to come back, but he doesn't listen to him. Marco wants to know why his wife did this, why she did things this way. Couldn't they just sit down and talk? Doesn't she realize how much this can hurt their son? Marie says for now Marco can keep the wine collection because losing the house, the family, the position of director in the company will be too much to lose in just one day, so he will need something to console himself. Marco asks her not to do this, she can't leave him with nothing, they are a family and she can't do this. Marie doesn't even bother to answer, she just leaves, and Marco tries to talk to her, asks her not to do this, what he did was a mistake, it won't happen again, he regrets it, but his wife doesn't listen. Marco lost everything.